Welcome, everyone, and thanks so much for joining. This is the inaugural session of Sunday School, and I'm super excited. Thank you for making the time. I know that it's extracurricular and on a Sunday, and we're all busy, so I really appreciate that. And what I really hope to do with this session is to do something that's open and inclusive and for everyone, not just super experienced programmers, anyone who is maybe a programmer making the first steps with AI, or maybe someone who likes to play with AI and thinks now is the opportunity to get a bit more into programming, or anyone who just wants to, I don't know, watch and listen and learn together. The way we're going to do it, at least today, is we'll start. So we have the Slido. Actually, let me put it again in the chat in case people want. So in the Slido, we have, you can raise questions and also vote on them. So I put it in the chat and I'm still admitting people. So we have already a few questions there, but you're very welcome to add new ones or to vote or comment. We'll start working through these and see how many we get. If it's too much, like if we get to I don't know, 45 minutes from now and there's still questions, then maybe we can bounce some of them to the next session, or I can try to address some of them in the email. And if we finish earlier, that's also fine. I will then show you something that I learned recently, which I really like, which is how to build and deploy really easily a remote MCP server on FastMCP Cloud. And I think it can come really handy. And it's also a nice demo of how easy it is to build like a little tool for, of course, the setup we have with agent decoding or anything else that uses MCP servers. And then if we still have time, we can hang out, chat, whatever is fun for people, discuss. Maybe other people have things they want to demo or show. Everything welcome. So again, you have the link to the Slido. I can see that we're already getting more questions, and that's great. And I'll start from the top. There's a question from David Stevenson. I don't know, David, if you're here, if you want to unmute yourself and ask, you are welcome. And if not, I'll go
Sure.
over. Hey,
Great.
go
Yeah.
ahead,
Well,
David.
thanks so much. Yeah. Well, I do some coding with AI, and like I said, I often find myself sort of repeating the same prompt cycles. Like really, basically, I have a to-do file, and I have the to-do file. Then I say, make a new README file that adds the features into to the to-do file, and then we do that step. And then I say, okay, now update the code to match the new README file. And it's a little bit more complicated that to get the prompt right. And I just have to copy paste these two prompts back and forth over and over again. And I'm just wondering if there's some way in Copilot or some other tool maybe that I can sort of say, okay, do step one of the process, now do step two of the process, and I don't have to like type it all out. Or maybe there's a better approach from the big picture.
No, that's a great question. And yes, there is a solution in Copilot, also in many other tools. Let me actually share my screen just so that I can demo it directly. My screen, although hopefully you can see my Copilot now.
Yeah, I can see.
I actually do that. For example, one thing I find myself doing a lot is I'm telling the agent, all right, commit everything and push it to the repo and pull rebase, basically like sync everything here with the repo. And we have more people trying to join. I'm sorry, I have to learn how to operate this. So how I do it is like Copilot has a feature called prompts. And if I open the command palette and I ask configure prompt files, and I have here this prompt commit, pull, rebase, push. It's a very simple prompt. That really just says, okay, which mode of Copilot to use is the agent mode. I only really ever use agent mode these days. It used to be that there was this distinction between editing and chatting. I don't think it's necessary anymore. I'm using the model Claude Haiku because it's fast and cheap and good enough for most simple things. Like I'm not doing like some super complicated agentic coding task here. I'm just asking you to commit some stuff. And then I give like the prompt, commit all the changes, pull, blah, 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 as you can see. And that's very convenient. And when I want to invoke it, I just do / and I can get it here. And so this is super convenient. It exists in Copilot as prompts, and you can just, it's basically put it in this file, which is like the name of the prompt, .prompt.md. And it gives you some help here with like, completing the model and stuff like this. So it's not very difficult to do. And you can also, if you open the command palette, Command Shift P, and you just say configure prompt, and you can do these things here. So that's super convenient, and you can after a while kind of collect a library of things that you'll use. And if you're using Claude, it has its own format that's called /commands, / commands. So I go to use Claude and I do, I also have it here. It's configured a little bit different, but you can read about it. It's just you put it in commands. And I believe all agents by now have some format like this. So yeah, it is really convenient to have a collection like this of things you do frequently, and you can do it this way.
Thank you so much. Yes. Maybe just one really quick follow-up question is there any way to like pass like an argument to a prompt? It's almost like a function. Can you give a custom option each time you would invoke it? But thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So I don't know. I don't think it's possible in Copilot, but I don't know. It maybe there is a way. Definitely, I think in Claude it allows you to give arguments like to the command. There's a bit more sophisticated. But one thing we can do, so I don't know if you know this, but it is really convenient. If you're in Copilot chat and you say add VSCode, you can ask questions about VSCode. So you can ask something like, can configured prompts have parameters or arguments? And it will waste money. And it will usually find good answers from the documentation. So I'm curious. I don't know. I never tried it, but it's possible, and it's also useful to know that you can do that because it's usually quite good at answering things. Now, to apologize. Maybe not. But so yeah, definitely in Claude and some of the others you have, and Copilot maybe not. But the thing you can always do, because it's just language, and it knows the context, so you can always say in the text of the command, read what I wrote about what is the directory and what is the file, and use that. And it will usually do the right thing, right? Because it's quite intelligent. So that's always an option.
Thank you. Very helpful. That's all new for me. So thank you very much.
All right, cool. Glad it helps. And Roger is asking, can prompts invoke other prompts or agents? I don't know if they can invoke other prompts. I suspect they don't, but I don't know for sure. Again, this is something that's a bit more sophisticated in Claude. You can actually invoke a command from anywhere, from an agent, or from another command, or from a scale. I think now that you have, this run an agent, or even run command. It could be that you can do it with run command, but you have these things. run tasks and so on. So I guess if you do run Subagent from within a command, it will, because it just reproduces it, just sends whatever is in the command. So it could be that you can invoke a command, and I just never tried it. You can definitely, I know that for a fact that you can invoke a Subagent like this. And Ilona is asking, is there a possibility to create a prompt priority list in the background directly? Oh, I don't really understand this. Ilona, do you mind saying more? Because it sounds super interesting, but I'm not sure I'm getting it completely.
Yeah, sure. I'm asking myself if I have a list of a lot of prompts like this in the background, which I have committed already for a long time. I would like to know which one I've used more often, which are seldom, so that I know for my projects where do I have to find the appropriate ones in a short time.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, that would be super interesting. I don't know. There's probably a solution. Nothing, I don't think there's anything built in, but if you have the history, maybe you can sort of do some analytics on it. So I don't have a good answer for you, but I'm definitely curious now. So I'll have a think and maybe we get back to it. Or if someone has some idea, that would be cool because, yeah, I can see how that would be valuable. It's almost like you are looking at your own work and asking, well, what is it I'm actually doing? I want to understand it better and prioritize it, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, that's really interesting question. I don't have a great answer, but I promise to investigate a bit.
Thank you.
All right. So what do we have here? Claude, when should I use projects and when skills? So this, I guess, more like about Claude, the web app, rather than Claude Code. So Claude, the web app, has the option of having a project where you can include lots of different files and some instructions. But Claude also now has skills, which are these packaged instructions and sometimes assets for behavior. And so there is some overlap, right? Because you could create a project, just put the instructions and the files and kind of use it in the same way you would use a skill. I think that where you can sort of make a choice, first of all, it may be a little bit easier to use projects if you're not yet used to working with skills, because it's a lot more intuitive. You just open a project and put some stuff in it. Whereas a skill, you need to package it and install it and all that. The other thing is projects are really good for something that's ongoing, long running, over time. Every week you add new files, you accumulate new chats, and it kind of evolves like this. Whereas skills are really something that's reusable. So if I have a project, I don't know, I have my accounting project in Claude. It helps me do a little bit of my accounting, which is very helpful. That's a project. I don't have a skill for that because really what I want to do there is to know a little bit of the history, to adjust things over time. Whereas if I wanted to create like the accountant skill, which I will distribute to all of you, I will share with you and tell you, hey, I got here like a great skill that knows all the basic things to do about accounting, and I'll create a zip file and share with all of you. That would be a skill, but it won't include any of my private information of my accounts. It will just be the sort of the instructions or some templates. So that's where I would say the distinction. In practical matters, I would also say if you have no experience in either, it makes sense to get started with projects because they're so easy to work with. And then when you get used to the format, if you then want to package something as a reusable skill that you can use across multiple projects or share with other people, that's a good time to move to a skill. I hope that answers it more or less. Anything follow-ups? No. Good. All right. So we'll move to, we have another question. By the way, most of the questions here are from Anonymous, which is absolutely fine. If it is from you and you feel like meeting yourself and and asking or clarifying, you're also very welcome. The question is there a way to avoid losing my entire chat history in Copilot when the agent keeps making simple mistakes after acknowledging them? So I'm not sure I completely understand, but maybe I do. So if you want to clarify and I didn't get it, just tell me. But the question is, what happens if like I do something and I have a long running session and everything works fine until it doesn't? Until at some point it does something silly and I'm like, no, that's not what I wanted. What can I do now? One option I have is to start a completely new chat from scratch, which is fine, and it's often the cleanest thing to do. But then I lose everything I did up to that point. And so, is there a solution to that? And so the way it works is Copilot has a feature called checkpoints, which again is not that uncommon. I think Code has it now too, and other agents too. I think you might need to turn it on. If you look at like here's the setting, checkpoints enabled. So you want to have this setting here enabled. And then when you work, let's say, there, and I submit it, and so it says hello, and then I say, I don't know, it did, and then I say it translated to branch. Okay, so now maybe I think like, oh no, that's not what I wanted. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe it should have been Spanish and not French. Or maybe I look at the translation and I think that's a terrible translation. That's not what I wanted. But I don't want to lose the complete chat history here because I find it useful. I can go to the checkpoint. And so these are the little dotted lines here with a bookmark icon next to them. When I go to the checkpoint and I click restore checkpoint, I'm back here, as if nothing after that happened. The chat that happened after this didn't happen. If there are changes to files, they also will be reverted. And so it's really a kind of the time machine. I rolled things back to a previous time, and now I can continue from where I was. So this is a great feature. It's useful to have. I would say maybe not a replacement for something like Git for version management, but for a very lightweight kind of way to track back, this is really good and useful. So reminder, what you should do is go to the settings and look for checkpoints and make sure that it's enabled. And you can also say show file changes. So if I'm working in editing files, this will be included, and it will say, okay, in this interaction, I modified this file and that file. And then you get built in here the ability to restore checkpoints. By the way, as far as I know, there's no redo. So if you went back and you deleted, that's it. You remove that. Oh no, there is redo now. So that's cool. I just learned. So very versatile. I think it was added recently, and it's really, really nice and convenient. Hope that helped. Any follow-ups, any questions from that? And there's a question from Steffi about Claude. And could you add, if we have new questions, can you add them in the Slido? Then we'll just kind of go over them by order. And windsurf and anti-gravity offer also a way to roll back. Yeah, and these are, I think, and Cloud Code does too. I don't know about Cursor, but I'd be surprised if it doesn't offer something like this. It's just they all call it something different, or the iconography is a little bit different, but it's usually something like checkpoints. All right, moving on. From Dishant, attended some session on spec-driven dev. Some suggested using backend spec and to front matter spec. If I see value in using one of these strict kind of frameworks for managing spec-driven development, I don't know really. It's a matter of taste. And I don't use this, so yeah, I don't know Gherkin very well. I looked a little bit at front matter. There's SpecKit, I think it's called, from GitHub. There is the one from Jessel. To me, it seems it's not really the best approach. It's an approach that would work well for programming with code, and maybe doesn't transfer as well to programming with language, which is kind of what we do with this agentic coding. I think it's maybe helpful the first time you approach spec-driven development because it kind of packages a process for you, and that can be helpful. At the same time, I'm really wondering if it's necessary, because the thing is, we all know intuitively how to do these things. Sometimes we need these processes to slow us down and force us to be very explicit, but none of us really need an explanation of what a specification could look like, or these are things we could do ourselves. And so my recommendation to people is more to practice doing this. Try different techniques, try different formats. Do I like it more like in a markdown document where I sort of spend a lot of time editing it until I'm really happy with it? Or maybe in other cases, I can do it ad hoc in the chat. Maybe see if there are some templates you like to work with and have like your own collection of templates. And I think that's usually sufficient. I think these frameworks are a little bit over-engineered. Maybe what they're good for is giving us an idea, kind of giving us an introduction that's a bit more structured to how to do spec-driven development. I hope this makes sense, Dishant and everyone. If there are any follow-ups or other questions, we can think about it together. Or if anyone has other experience and they liked using one of these specification frameworks. All right, let's move on. Can you share your thoughts on Cursor versus Visual Studio Code? What would tip the scales for you to use towards using one versus the other? I have my own preference. I use Visual Studio Code with GitHub Copilot, sometimes with Claude. I like it a lot. There are several things I like. One is just that it's established. I've been using it for quite a few years now. It's open source, which I really appreciate. And I have to say, I'm a little bit better about Cursor forking Visual Studio Code, which is one of the coolest open source projects, and making it closed clone. I think that's not very pro-social behavior, but that's just my opinion. I don't want to be too ideological about it. They're very similar. I don't think it really matters which of them you use. It's best to use the one that you are familiar with, comfortable with, have lots of friends or colleagues using, have maybe a good deal on getting the subscription. I think that Visual Studio Code with GitHub Copilot is already very good and improving very quickly, and they're investing a lot in it, and it has a legacy. There's been things with Cursor where, for example, there is extension marketplace was affected by security issues where people kind of supply chain attacks, as it's called, when they didn't review properly what people are uploading there. I think Cursor is now a large company and very successful one, so I don't know if this will continue to be an issue. But in general, I would say it doesn't matter. Use the one that you like, use the one that other people use, and it will be fine. It's not that different. If you ask me, I say Visual Studio Code is great, but someone thinking that actually Cursor is better, that's also good. And I would say, I would add one more thing, which is just to keep in mind, there are several different products in this space, some of them very successful and famous, like Cursor, Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, a few others. Some that are more like contenders, like Anti-Gravity now from Google, and Windsurf, and Gemini CLI, and Open Code. Honestly, they're all the same. There's really not much of a difference. They will do everything they can to convince you that their product is special, of course, because they have commercial interest in this. But the reality is most of the smarts are coming from the model, not so much from the product. At any given time, one product will sort of run ahead and have some innovation. I don't know, now a lot of these agents are introducing some smart indexing of the code base, or some nice way to run agents in parallel. And then after a couple of weeks, all the others catch up. So I would say don't take it too seriously. Use something that you like, that feels good, that you're familiar with. That's the most important thing. Moving on, code subagent. I thought I'd tell Claude to start a subagent, but I need to define them in advance. What are good use cases versus starting a new chat? Wow. Yeah. So first of all, I don't know if I think these are sometimes a bit overused. I'm not sure that there are many great reasons to start a subagent, because the problem with a subagent is it's kind of opaque to you. It happens in the background. You don't know what's happening there. There are two main advantages to subagents that are worth keeping in mind. And as you build more complex workflows, they can come in handy. One of them is context. So when you continue working in the same chat, you have the context of this chat. So it's everything you already introduced there, if it's configuration like agents.md or cloud.md or any of these things, and then the chat itself and what happened and the history. When you start, it has its own context. It's kind of starting from clean slate. It has whatever is the specification of this agent, the initial instructions, and then the work that it does. That means that it's kind of completely isolated. It doesn't look into what you've already done unless you explicitly transfer it in some way. It also means that you have more headroom because the context window fills with time as you work on longer tasks. And so this is one of the advantages of working with a subagent. Separate context window. The other one is that you can run these in parallel, right? You can now run these subagents in the background in parallel. You can do it in Claude, in Copilot, and many of the other products. And so if there's something that can happen in parallel and you don't need to wait for it, that's obviously quite advantageous and saves you a lot of time. So for example, if I have, I don't know, something like review these 3 directories, but you can do it at the same time. I don't need to review one directory and then move to the next one and then move to the third one. I just want you to review these 3 directories and collate the reviews for the three of them. This could happen in parallel and save me a lot of time. Hope this makes sense. I just wanted to make a request that if you have questions, you try to put them in the Slido, because it's kind of easier for everyone to follow, but especially for me, because I need to kind of follow the multiple lines. So I'll try to also get to questions from the chat later, but for now, moving through the Slido.
Sorry, can I maybe ask something regarding the subagents?
Sure.
So, like, what is sub about it? Like, they seem like agents to me. Like, why is this called subagent if it just has its own configuration and it just runs?
Because it is controlled by your main agent. I think the terminology here, I'm kind of guessing because I didn't invent this terminology, but yes, I think the idea is there is the agent that I'm controlling here from the chat or whatever in Claude. And then the agent can start agent and control them. And these are then sub-agents.
But these subagents, they are configured before, right? Like,
they don't have to be.
ah,
So you can configure them with like their own specification and context. But you can also, if you work with code, you can tell it, do this and do it in a sub-agent. Start a sub-agent that does something, and it will start the sub-agent without any fixed specification, just prompting it.
okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
And in Slido, it's, by the way, limited to 160 characters. It's really short.
Oh, I'm sorry, and thanks for letting me know. But hopefully, it will encourage more of you to unmute and say what's on your mind, because I really like it. Okay, so we have another question here from Dishant. Diff in .rules files in cursor, WinServe, and agents.md files suggested by other framework. Which of these we write at global versus module-based files? I mean, we can talk for hours about this. So, like there's a course I teach together with Isaac Pfaff on AI coding. We spent like a week basically on this. And there's so many different combinations you can do. In general, the way to think about it is what's specific to your project and what is always true. So I have some rules that are always true. Maybe I can look at them quickly. Instructions. So I have like these global instructions, and there are some things I always want to do, like how to use Git and how to use GitHub, and here are some MCP servers I have, and there's no reason to change it. It's always true in every project I work in. But you see, it's not a lot because these are just really some basic rules. But then when you work on a project, there may be something that's specific to the project that is relevant. So I can again look here at an example. If I go, so I have this tool that I'm running, and it has its own rules, which use ruler, which is and agents.md says, okay, this is the development process for this project. In this project, I want to always follow test-driven development. It's not universally true that for all projects I want to use test-driven development, but in this project, it is important to me, and so I'm being very specific. You should have unit tests and integration tests and so on. We should always format the code. How to branch. This is how you should do branch. This is how you should run the test suite, and so on and so forth. And so we kind of find these combinations of what's always relevant and what are things that are relevant only to one specific project. I hope this helps. I hope this makes sense. It's a bit hard to cover all of this in a few moments. It is, there's a lot you can do there, but what I would suggest is experiment, try different combinations, try some global rules. Maybe at some point you realize, hey, this global rule shouldn't really be a global rule because I keep overriding it. I keep encountering cases where in a project they need to do something different. Then you know, okay, maybe this is not a good global rule. It's something that's more project specific.
Hey, Ilna, thanks for the answer.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just have a follow-up question on that. Where do you keep these files, like the global instructions and the showed? Where do you keep it in the project? And then the dot rules file, where do you keep that one? One might be the dot rules might be one project level, and one and you might be having some separate module level dot rules file also probably. But where do you keep the global instructions suddenly?
It really depends on the tool. So in GitHub, in Visual Studio Code and GitHub Copilot, you have configure instructions, and it just puts them here, and you can even have this apply to rules. I think Cursor has these too. So just put ***. It means apply it always. And in other cases, you could maybe filter by file type or by directory. And then in projects, often you'll put an agents.md, which you can put at the repository root or at any subdirectory. This is respected by many agents now, for example, GitHub Copilot and Codex and many others. Claude, on the other hand, likes to have Claude.md. And so maybe they didn't standardize yet, but it's exactly the same. It's just a markdown file, and you can put it in the project top level. In Claude, if you want to have a global configuration file, it is in your home. So it will be something like, I have basically the same thing here. Codex will have it in codex agents.md. So you need to kind of read the documentation of the tool, but they all have some way of doing it. I don't know what tool specifically you're using, but we can figure this out.
Yeah, thank you. Understood. This global instructions.md, which one you said is the .global.instruction.md. That is your own file that you have written. That is not a specified, not a, what do you say, this, what do you call it? Suggested name by some framework, right? That is your custom name that you've given.
It's any name. I think the way Visual Studio Code manages it is using this apply to front method. And I think it's the same in Cursor and a few of the others. So I called it global. It's just how I call the name. I couldn't call it anything else. What really matters is this thing here. And so it kind of evaluates it to decide when to use it.
No, but where do you keep it? Because it should be in the project also, right? I didn't understand
No,
this
it's
part.
global. It's not project specific. It's global. So
How does Visual Studio get to know about it?
Sorry, come again?
How does Visual Studio get to know about it?
Because it is in the Visual Studio directory. You see, it's in users, library, application, code, user, prompts, global instructions, LMD. So it has its own location where it keeps this.
Okay. So
and this is a bit,
you researched this, that you have to go and keep this file over here, or you made this file through some UI and it automatically placed it in this folder?
Yeah, here's the UI. So if you open the command palette, Command Shift P, configure instructions.
Okay.
And then it tells you, what do you want? Do you want a new instruction file? Do you want to generate like magically, or do you want to edit an existing one? That's all. I didn't invent the location, and I probably wouldn't know if it wasn't already the UI, or at least I would have had to research.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And again, reminder, especially like at least with Copilot, or Visual Studio Code, I always just go and ask. So like, go at VSCode, where are instruction files? Let's see if this works. Yeah, so it answers me. So this is really convenient. I know that Claude does this. I know that Copilot does this. Maybe not all products are as good, but they usually have some way where you can just ask the chat and it'll help you find out. I mean, that's how I learn a lot of these things. All right, moving on. How can I stop Copilot from making bugs worse or bypassing them, forcing me to undo edits and retry with a different strategy? I'm not sure I completely understand it. So if the person who asked it happens to be here and doesn't mind the muting and kind of describing it with more words, it might be good. I can give maybe a general answer, which is when the agent does things that are not what we wanted, like creating bugs or not fixing existing bugs, there are two options, right? Either it doesn't have the ability to do what we want, which theoretically could be like this agent, the models are not perfect. There are always like some corner cases, some problems from the edge of computer science where they're still not able to solve. But increasingly, these models are very good. And for the kind of relatively mundane things we do, like, I don't know, build an application or something like this, they can actually do it. And so the other option is it didn't understand to the extent that it understands anything. It didn't understand us. And so usually, if I get to a point where I see, okay, this didn't do what I wanted, it created a bug, or it, ignored the bug that it should have fixed. One way is to kind of be frustrated and say, okay, it's making the bugs worse, it's all terrible. Another is to stop and use it as a learning opportunity and think, okay, I asked for X, I got A. What is a Y that if I ask it, I get B, which is what I wanted? And usually after some iterations, I get it right. And so it's true that it requires some backtracking and trying again, but it's not necessarily that bad. Sometimes I wish in everything in life I got the opportunity to sort of roll things back and try again. Usually when I have conversations with people, if I said the wrong thing, it could have disastrous implications. But when I work with an agent, the cost is relatively low, trying again and learning from the experience. So I hope this very general answer is a bit helpful. And if not, and you have some follow-ups, happy to discuss.
Hey, Lenore, I have a follow-up question regarding the previous topic, the Copilot instructions, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So I set a Copilot instructions in VS Code, and I set 4 different agents with a workflow that's actually asking the Copilot to go and ask an agent in an asking mode with a more, let's say, expensive model. And then it should go through the rest of the agents, like after it gets an answer. Now, what I find it difficult to understand is how to enforce it to follow the rules, because actually, according to his answer, once he didn't follow the rules, he apologized and said there is no enforcement. He saw tunnel vision on his task completion instead of doing actually what it was asked to do. So I kind of find it difficult to understand. Is there a way to enforce it to go for specific instructions at all times? Thank you.
I'm not trying to. So what you're asking is whether you can enforce that this kind of planning agent in ask mode only does the planning and doesn't go ahead and implement later.
Well, so if I'm working in just in agent mode, right? So I'm using the Claude Sonnet model, for example. I'm asking it to do few tasks. It go ahead and does that, right? But in my specific project, what I try to experiment with is to set up Copilot instruction to say that the first agent must to be asked with, whatever my prompt is given it. Then a planner agent, like an architect, will break down the answer from the asking mode and plan the tasks. And then a doer agent will implement that. And eventually, the last one will wrap it up with the documentation, the writing agent. So I have like 4 steps: the asking mode, the planning mode, the implementation mode, and agent, and the documentation agent. So ideally, every prompt, I kind of expected it to go and ask that more expensive model, which is the Opus for whatever, and the lower or the less costly models will do the planning and the implementation and the documentation. Now, it's just an experiment because honestly, I got the credits from the company that I work with, but I thought to myself, if there is an option to kind of orchestrate different agents for different roles, could be cool. But then it says, I'm sorry, I know that I'm supposed to follow the rules, but there is no enforcement. Therefore, I'm focusing on performing the tasks. So what he suggested is just every prompt to explicitly say, hey, remember following the instructions. And it kind of missed the point, I believe.
I think so. I'm not sure I understand, but it sounds like the question is, can it follow the instructions, or is it impossible for it to follow the instructions?
Yeah, I
It
guess
sounds
it's
a little bit, it sounds a little bit, and these are two different things. That there are cases where it can follow the instructions, but it doesn't. And this depends a lot on the model, right? It keeps getting better. The most recent models are not better at it. Some are better, right? So GPT-5 is amazing at it if it's thematically following instructions in a way that's kind of scary. Claude Sonnet is somewhere in between. It's not always that obedient. Claude Opus is a lot better. But then you're asking for something it cannot do, which is it cannot change which model it will use because it is the model. Like the agent is the model and it's reading the instructions. There is no way for it to say, now I'm going to become a different model, which is just an architectural limitation of the tool. So if you do something here in the chat and I chose a model, cool. This is it. That's the model I'm going to be working with. And I can instruct it again and again. Now you need to be now Opus. It will not be.
So I understand. Maybe let me try to be more specific. It's not the definition of the model of a specific agent is actually defined within the agent MD file, which is under the GitHub root. So from the document, maybe it's my bad interpretation of what I read, but the way I understood it works, once you set up the Copilot instructions under that project, and you generate various custom agents. So it's something, if you click on the agent dropdown in the chat, it should give you an option to define a custom agent. So the custom agent configuration, it's in the button. Configure custom agent.
I know.
Yeah. So once I've done that, those are the 4 MD files that I created, the ones that I told you with, and you can explicitly say that a specific agent will be in asking mode and which model you define that. And then the orchestration, which is the instructions, it's kind of calling every agent and doing the workflow that you define. So it's not that it's not working, it's working. But
sorry, just a second. Are you using run sub agent to call this?
No, actually, no. That's the point.
I think that may be the solution. So again, and it kind of connects a little bit to what Steffi asked before, because it needs to be a different agent. Like the main agent is not going to change the model. But when you invoke a sub agent, and I didn't test this, but I'm pretty sure, if the agent definition has a specific model, it will respect it, I think. And so I'm pretty sure this is the solution. If you want to create this like really complex orchestrated workflow where you do one thing with one model and a different thing with a different model, is to run them as sub-agents. Try this. I will try it too. I don't have a guarantee that it will work, but that's probably the solution. In the main thread, when you're working with a main agent, it will not change its model while
Nice.
you're working.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Elinor.
Sure, you're welcome. And by the way, you can change the model yourself. So I did do this often. I do like whenever I use an expensive model like GPT or Opus, and I'll do the planning, and then I'll switch to Haiku, and I'll say now implement it. And that seems to work, but I don't think it knows how to change itself. All right, well, we have another question here on the Slido. Add-on of David's question. A lib with a prompt eval according task helpfulness to have a prio for next time working on a similar feature or requirement task.
Eleanor, may I interrupt you, please? That's my one. We talked already before.
I understand. Okay, cool. Yeah, so basically doing research on your own past work. And there's one tool that I forgot to say, but I really love it. And I want to share with you just so you know. And it's called SpecStory. If you don't know it already, I really recommend getting it. So basically they're kind of at the forefront of spec-driven development. But they have all kinds of things, but they have a free tool, which is an extension you can install in all the different, like you can use with Copilot, with Cursor, with Claude Code and so on. And all it does is it will capture all of your history and it uploads it to the cloud if you want, or just keep it locally. And this is a really nice tool to have if you like doing this sort of thing, like doing archeology on your own work, learning from it, and using it to create instructions or agents or so on. So definitely recommend checking this out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, cool. Yeah, we've been at it for a while. More questions or demo? Do people have a preference? I kind of promised that I'll do a demo. So unless there is the pressing questions, then we do have a few. I will switch, but then what I'll do is I'll try to follow up later or after the demo or in 2 weeks when we do the next session. All right. So what I wanted to demo, as I said, is FastMCP Cloud, which I discovered kind of recently, and it's really nice. Okay, it's like really nice tool. That basically is the standard kind of platform as a service for MCP servers. What is cool about it is it's really easy to deploy a remote MCP server. So if you have some tool that you want to create and share with others, or you just like this kind of setup where you don't have something fiddly running on your machine, or even if you have some information like you want to do a front end for a database that you could share with your team, or you have something that worked for you on your laptop, but you want also to work in Claude online or one of the other tools, that's very convenient. And I thought what we'd experiment is building agentically like a really simple MCP server just to see that how easy it is. So what I'll do, I'll go to GitHub and I'll create a new repository. And what I had in mind is to take like this database of country information. So it's not very secret, but we'll kind of pretend as if it's our own data, and creating an MCP server that allows querying it. So let's call it like countries MCP. and I'll look at the README because that's convenient, and I'll put a Python ignore file and create this repository. And now I can clone it. And so go here to repos and get clone this repository. And good. So I have here this feed, open it in Visual Studio Code here. And what I want to do is really to do the most I can get done without doing any programming, just doing like super simple prompting. And the exercise here is not to show you some super sophisticated coding workflow, but actually to convince ourselves that it is really easy. So I will start maybe with problems. I have prepared something here, so it will save me a little bit the time. No, let's undo it. So a prompt like this, it's really simple. Saying like, let's create an MCP server with FastMCP2. So FastMCP Cloud works with FastMCP, which is just the most common library in Python for MCP servers. And it has information about countries, and I'll provide you with a JSON file, and I can return information about these countries using tool it exposes, and it should be in a format ready for deployment on FastMCP Cloud. So test it locally and get this repository in check for me deploying it as an MCP server on FastMCP Cloud. Then I told it, here is this country's JSON. It's really just like a big JSON with all the information about the different countries. If you want to look at it, we can like look at it quickly here. It's just like basically a database in JSON format. And I've given it a bit of documentation hints. So like here you can read more about FastMCP. Here you can read about FastMCP Cloud. And that's it. That's all I've done. Not the most sophisticated, spec-driven, whatever development. I didn't do any customization. I don't have agents.md. Maybe we can still get it to work. I'll go here. Let's maybe work with Gemini, which is a decent but also fast model for this. And let's see what happens. So obviously I rehearsed it, so I know that it can probably work, but what I wanted really to show here is that for many projects, you would want to invest a lot more in creating a specification and customizing your projects and having rules. But what if we are working really on like this really simple tool? And I just want to give it a try, and maybe it's just my personal project, so it's not very high stakes how it's going to work. I can still get away with a lot. And that's quite amazing. Like, I don't think it would have been possible to have something like this work with even the previous generation of models, but with this new one, like Gemini 3, Claude, Sonnet, and Opus 4.5, GPT-5, they really can do a lot by themselves. So this thing is running there, and it figured out the countries of JSON, and it got it here locally, and it's writing the code for the MCP server, which looks more or less what I'd expect it to be. And it created a project with UV using PyProject Toml, and it's testing it now. So it's testing it, doesn't quite work, it will fix it. That's very nice. It can do it by itself. And maybe while it's working, I can show you a little bit about FastMCP. So FastMCP is just like the most standard library for doing MCP in Python. And then I have version 2, and it's really easy to use for us and for the agent. You just sort of decorate functions with mcp.tool, and it becomes a tool that are very easy to work with. And they created this FastMCP Cloud, which is, where's the documentation? So now I just got into my own installation, and that's all very nice, but what do I have here? Oh, where actually I called it to the agent before, so I must have known it at some point. Yes. So while the agent is still working here and testing and trying things, we can get an overview. So really just basic platform as a service arrangement where you give it your Git repository from GitHub, and it deploys it and magically and puts it somewhere where you have authentication and you can easily access it. So I found it really easy to use. If I look here, for example, and I ask to manage it, it will have something like, I can put environment variables, authentication mode, is it private, is it public, the same kind of thing you've probably seen on if you're using this kind of services like Railway for deploying Docker container or something like this. All right, it's figuring something and it's telling us the country is successfully created, tested, and pushed to the repository. Okay, and this all looks pretty good, and it even bothers to deploy this to FastMCP, create a new project, select the repository, set the entry point, and deploy. Let's do that and see how it works. So I will here and edit new server, hosted server. So this is a server hosted here, and here is the GitHub repository, which just to convince ourselves, it really did push everything here into the GitHub repository as I asked. And in terms of configuration, I said, okay, authentication. Yes, I want authentication because I'm pretending that this is like a very private, personal thing. And it should not be discoverable. It's just mine. It doesn't have to be in any kind of registry of MCP servers. Advanced configuration. So yeah, that's my project. Although I probably don't even need that. Could add environment variables if I needed, and that's it really. And here we need server.py. What did it say? MCP. This is all, by the way, free. So they have, of course, like enterprise packages for which you can pay some money for. But if you're only doing something simple like this, they let you use it for free, which is very nice of them. And they promise that it's free forever. And now that it's building it, we can look at the building logs. It's the same thing you'd expect and have seen in other environments. There's a Docker container somewhere. It will fetch the code from GitHub and deploy it using that. Here we can look what happens when you try to upgrade. So I'm a hobbyist, and they promise me free forever to instantly deploy my repos, connect to external MCP, and so on and so forth. 1 million requests, 1,000 build minutes. So that's enough to do stuff. And then you have Pro and Enterprise, really the more complicated setup. By the way, I have no affiliation with FastMCP Cloud. I just discovered it, and I think this is pretty cool. And I wanted to share it with you. Meanwhile, we can look a little bit more at what the agent did here. So it's pretty impressive. Again, this is stuff I did not see happening not a year ago, not even half a year ago, but now with Gemini 3 Pro, in the instructions I've given, they were really minimalistic. And I'm not recommending this as a best practice for your agentic coding projects, but for something simple, a toy that I want to get out really quickly, it worked. And it really figured out a lot of things by itself. It read the documentation somewhere here, I guess. It downloaded files for the data, and it wrote the code, and then it tested it, and some things didn't work, so it fixed it, and eventually it committed everything, and it pushed it to my GitHub repository. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, Minimal is building here. Another nice thing about FastMCP Cloud, by the way, is that, like many of these sounding, but if I change something in GitHub, it will rebuild it and redeploy it. Continuous integration and deployment. So really easy to use. God, it's doing that thing with a Docker container, and I guess it will be soon ready for us. And I guess that's also the kind of thing you can pay more money and they'll give you a faster build machine. But for a free build, getting like 3, 4, 5 minutes or a working deployed build, that's not bad. All right, so it is deployed in production. We can go and inspect it. So it has a built-in inspector for MCP. And so we can see that indeed it exposes all these different tools like list countries and get country by name and by code. And that's very good. Remember, we didn't specify any of that, right? We just told the agent, here's a JSON file of countries, figure out, do an MCP that kind of lets us use it. And it did something that looks very sensible. And we can test it because FastMCP Cloud also has like this little chat functionality where we can test it. So maybe something like, give me all the countries starting with a Z. All right, so it has list countries, and I guess now it will try to filter them, and it says, okay, Zambia and Zimbabwe are countries starting with Z. Very good. It's clearly working very well. Maybe now we can say, what is the country code of Zambia? It worked. It called get country by name, and then it got this results with all the information about Zambia and figure out the country code. So that's very nice to do something like, I don't know, what is the capital of Zimbabwe? It has dedicated get country capital, so that was very fast. So as you can see, but I guess like 1 minute ago or a bit longer, we had nothing. Now we have a deployed remote MCP server You see, I didn't write a line of code. I got a very simple prompt. This is kind of like almost like a degenerate project. It's embarrassing, and intentionally, I wanted to be a little bit embarrassing here, but also like this encourage you because anyone can do it anytime. It doesn't take a lot of work. And now that I have it, just so that you are convinced how it has this nice convenience here, connect to Claude Code. Let's try that. Let's go to Claude Code and see that we can use it. So, well, like your directory, and it says, okay, you should type here Claude add MCP, blah, 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 blah. It already had the whole for me, and I ran it, and I guess it means that now I have dot Claude, right? No? It didn't. So why did it put it? Do I really have this? Let's try. See what MCP server. Okay, so yeah, it did. And this MCP server, I just need to authenticate. So calling it an authenticate because that's a remote MCP. It's hosted on FastMCP Cloud. I'll just need to give it access. And now I can say, like, I don't know, capital of operation. Yeah, I need to realize that it can use our MCP server and asked it for the get country capital, and that worked. So again, what did I want to learn here? First of all, that FastMCP Cloud is a really nice, easy tool to use that you can use for mostly for free, just to get a remote MCP server out. It can be convenient, maybe just for your own setup, or if you want something to work in an environment that only supports remote MCP servers, like the Claude web app or the GitHub, the hosted GitHub Copilot agent, or one of these things. Also, that it's becoming ridiculously easy to do stuff. So why not give it a try? You don't need to write tons of code. You don't need to do a lot of planning. I'm not saying this is going to work for every project, right? This is a toy project. For more complex projects, you probably need to invest a bit more. But even if you don't, you can do a lot in very little time and effort. So yeah, that's my little demo. Maybe we have only a few minutes, but if anyone has any questions or thoughts or anything to share, that would be great. And sorry that we didn't cover all the questions from the title. I'll try to follow up in email on some of them and also to the rest to bounce to the next session, which is in 2 weeks. Ian, hey, Ian. Oh, Ian. Nice to
Hey. Yeah, nice to see you again, Elena. I was just wondering, how does the agent know which question? Sorry, no, and how does the agent know what queries an MCP server can answer? And it's a sort of an order of preference between servers. If multiple servers would be able to answer that question, if that makes sense.
Yes, so it will be easier to answer by going back here to the inspector. So an MCP server exposes all kind of things like tools, resources, templates, and prompts. Usually it's tools that are most relevant. These are just like functions you can call. And when you install the MCP server, as we did a few moments ago with Claude, it will put this list of tools in the context of the agent. It will tell it like, you have access to all these functions, and here's a description of what this tool does. So if you need to get the currency, you should use this function. And then it kind of counts in the agent to do it. A pretty common complaint these days people have is, wow, we're really stuffing the context with a lot of stuff the more MCP servers we have. And this is why people are now, including myself, very excited about formats like skills that maybe sort of encapsulate this a little bit more. But generally, it's really just that. It just puts this list of tools in the agent's context and sort of fingers crossed that the agent will figure out what's the best thing to do, which often it does.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Welcome. All right. So thank you so much, everyone. This was brilliant, and I hope it will only get better from now on. So I'll be doing these every other week going forward, and you're always very, very welcome. Other than that, some other announcements. On Tuesday, I have a live session together with Isaac as part of the course we're doing on Raven, but this is a free session. Also on tools, different customizations you can do with tools for your agent. We'll do less MCP, more skills and command line tools. So you're very welcome, and I think it will be a lot of fun. And I'll also share details of that in the follow-up email. And we have our course that is paid, so I don't want to do too much advertising, but it is in January, the next cohort. And we'll do this again in 2 weeks, and then every other week, I hope. So again, thank you so much for joining. This was a lot of fun for me. I hope for you too. And see you soon.